Hey there, Zlatko here. Welcome to What is My Brain podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I get the opportunity to chat with fellow founders and business operators about their journey and how they got to where they are now, where they are going, and how they're going to get there. I'm planning on bringing guests and touching on topics such as running multiple businesses, executing ideas, and just spitballing about random topics and current events. It's a casual conversation, and that will hopefully bring value to anyone that decides to listen. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in.
Awesome. Here we go, man. Wade, we finally did it after so many times of going back and forth and having to reschedule for various reasons. The first one, unfortunately, being a technical issue. Thank you so much, man, for jumping on and being on the podcast. And I'm excited to chat with you and kind of get to know you a little bit more, because I know you have a long history and a story of different aspects of life, and like you just said, living in LA. And so I want to give you the floor. Do a quick introduction and let people know what you do, what you're working on, and anything else you want to share, my man.
Yeah, thanks, man. Absolutely. So I'm a recovering lawyer. So most people for like a large would view me as a lawyer for a large part of my life. So I did the traditional straight out of college, went to law school, went to GW in DC, and then I ended up going back to the West Coast. And I was just a lawyer for a long time, but I was probably should have just skipped law school and gone straight to writing. So was a writer
Okay.
at heart. Um, I had some, when I moved to LA to really be a writer and sort of did the law on the side. And that was the whole point of that, was to try to be able to kind of break through for writing. And I had some successes. I had some stuff got really close, and so, um, you know, it had people attached to a lot of my projects. I had Bo Bridges in his kitchen making me, marmalade on toast, being like, "I'm really interested in this pilot you did," and so I got super close a few times, but it just never panned out. And then ended up getting married, moving to Virginia Beach, and still writing, but left the law, and now basically working on doing. I do a lot of content writing, a lot of email writing for businesses and B2B and that kind of thing. But my main focus right now really is focusing on what I like to call infotainment, and trying to convince people and persuade people that your content needs to be entertaining, right? And
Yeah.
everyone's kind of value. So that's in a quick, in a quick
And
nutshell.
I love it, man. I love it. So tell me about kind of the LA scene, and when you got there, where you moved from, and what kind of drove you. Like, where did the writing start? I guess would be my biggest question. Is like, what triggered that, and what were you writing? Was it like short films? Was it the shows? What was the writing all about?
So when I was working for the government in Phoenix, Arizona, and then I started my own firm, and I had my own firm, and I went to visit my friend who lived in Santa Monica, and I grew up in North Dakota, and then we moved
Okay.
from North Dakota to Arizona, so I'd never really seen the ocean before. And so I visited my friend in Santa Monica, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" So I took the California bar. I went to live with him on his couch like an actor, and that started sort of the process. And then I just started writing, and I did some spec scripts for TV. I got a meeting on West Wing. That didn't pan out. That tells you a little bit when I was there. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and I just kept writing, and everything kind of culminated into a one man show that I did in Hollywood, and I won some awards for that. And yeah, so the whole time was just writing the whole time, and was like, man, I really don't want to do this legal thing, but can't really pay the bills any other way. And so that's sort of what LA was. And then discovered email marketing, and that people would pay me to write emails for them, and ghostwriting, and so it's a little bit different than what I anticipated in the beginning, but it's definitely writing. And the goal is to be writing all the time and get back to being able to do a lot of my own projects.
I love it, man. I love it. And what kind of businesses are you usually working with nowadays?
Well, I mean, I've got some. It ranges. I have a local regenerative farm business here in Virginia Beach that I do work for, all the way up to I've got a pretty big SaaS company that has 111 employees, and I'm not allowed to talk about who they are because of
Okay.
the NDA. But there is a broad range basically. So my preference is B2B, is a little bit larger B2B, but I do dig the regenerative farm, you know, people here because they're doing some cool stuff. So.
Right. No, that's really awesome. And when did you actually get to LA? Like what year was that when you started?
Oh, you're dating me, man. So I got to LA in 2003. No, 2003. So I was in LA from 2003 to 2019, and then I moved. So I was there for 16 years, and I moved out here to Virginia Beach. Oh, I lost your audio. I can't hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can. You're back.
Okay, sorry. I hit the mute. My dog was deciding to drink water right now, so I wanted to make sure we didn't hear like all this like splashing in the background. But damn man, so I used to actually so when I lived in LA, I lived in LA from 2004, I think it was 2013 to like 2016 or something like that, like
Mhm.
4 or 5 years, 4 years I think it was. I actually hung out with a lot of people that were sort of in that world. Are you familiar with like the Larchmont area, like in Koreatown over
Mhm.
there, like
Oh
where?
yeah.
Yeah. So I hung out with a lot of people that were in that world, and man, I swear, every other person you talk to, they were doing some sort of writing, some sort of acting, some sort of background work. It was pretty impressive, man. So I know that's a hard world to tap into when it comes to like actually getting a show off the ground or getting something like a movie or whatever else it is. So I'm sure that was super challenging at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it was very challenging. I got tired of hitting a lot of brick walls, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to self-produce a one-man show, right? And so I self-produced it, and that was a big confidence builder for me. It was really well received, won some awards for it. And then, it's interesting is it's so much easier to make money and get paid to ghostwrite and do email marketing. And I would just, encourage people if they're struggling at all is to consider doing that because the way everything is now is you can self-produce almost anything if you have the money. So just
Yeah.
ghostwrite, make the money. There's never been more demand right now for copywriting or for ghostwriting or email marketing or whatever, especially if you can be entertaining and make the money and then self-produce whatever you're going to do, either self-publish a book or whatever.
Yeah. So let me ask you about the whole. You said you kept hitting brick walls. Why? What do you think that is? Like in LA, where do you think people break through, and where do you think people kind of like hit that wall? Is it a I'm sure it has something to do with like a network of people that you surround yourself with. But what do you think kind of stop? Like, where do you think you hit the wall, and what caused you to, I guess, not being able to get like past that or get around some of that?
Honestly, my stuff wasn't good enough in the
Okay.
beginning. So it's just I didn't have a healthy respect for the craft of what I was doing because
Okay.
I was so used to a lot of the things that I did that I was able to just kind of do it like at about 70-80% and have success. You know what I mean? For
Yeah.
some things I'm good at. And writing is not like that. Writing, if you're going to write, um, you got to get the reps in, and you can't learn what you need to learn. You can't have the discoveries that you need to have unless you get the reps in. So I'm a big volume rep person now. But in the
Right.
beginning was not. And then the other thing is just there's so much, there's so many people trying to get stuff made and there's only so much money. And, so even if I felt like I had, like the closest I got was with, I had a pilot for TV, and that's when Bo Bridges got connected to it. And I was like, this is going to get made. Right. And even if a pilot gets made, though, something like only like a very small percentage of pilots get made into TV shows. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so, in that world, it's the traditional entertainment world. There's very large barriers to entry, but there's not a lot of opportunities because there's only so many movies that are made in a year. There are only so many TV shows. And that's when I started to kind of look at, like I said, self-producing. And now every year it gets easier to self-produce whatever it is that you want to do. And I've negotiated. So I'm also, a lawyer. I've negotiated some book contracts for people. I would just, unless you can get a contract with a big publishing house, I would just always self-publish your own books because the all the contracts and everything is slanted in such a way to take advantage of all the creators. And so, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so
I've
that's,
heard that. I've heard that so many times from different people about self-publishing a book. And I just posted something about that recently that I'm actually working on outlining, my own book probably looking to like start writing it maybe end of this year and getting it out by maybe sometime in 2024. I don't really have like a strong timeline. I'm just like more like marinating it right now. But yeah, I really don't understand, getting going down that rabbit hole. I mean, I guess if you got a name behind you and different things like that, but I feel like self-publishing, even if you do have a name behind you, like I look at people, for example, I was just listening to Louis CK, right? He was on Joe Rogan recently, and he does everything for the past like 10 years or something. He does everything on his own website. Like he doesn't go
Mhm.
through the regular, funnels of Hollywood and getting, Netflix and, all these other things. He's just like, dude, it's on my website, and if you want to check it out there, the money comes directly to me, and then I, pay people out and all these other things. I feel like there's no, I can't find a strong reason for somebody to go down this rabbit hole of like going with a publishing company. Like, what is that primary reason? Like, can you tell me what that is?
Well, I think part of it's generational. So I'm older, right? So for me, when I grew up, there wasn't the options that there are now for self-publishing. So like in my 20s and my 30s, even into late 30s, early 40s, they just didn't have the options that we have today in terms of the ability to do whatever it is that you want to do, right? So that's one thing. It's like sort of generational momentum. I think the other thing that was ego, and then the third part about it is people just don't simply know. So if you
Right.
look at your traditional like information product business, right, on the internet, people who sell
Hmm.
courses, people who sell, whatever, like a book or whatever you want,
Yeah.
you can take that model, that exact model, and you can apply it to the creative world. You could make your own TV show and do that. You could apply
Right.
it to whatever it is that you wanted to do. But the information products is a learned skill. Like in 2017, I was tired of paying people for my law firm to generate leads. And so I was like, I'm going to figure this out. And that sort of started me the rabbit hole of internet marketing and direct response and all of that. And it took 5 years before I even knew my head from my ass in terms of what I was doing,
Right.
and so I think that's the other part about it too, is it's a skill set problem. People have, they'll have one of three things. They'll have the creative skill, right? But they'll have the wrong mindset, which is the starving artist mindset. They're like, I'm not going to
Hmm.
be a business person. Okay. And then even if they have the business person, they don't have the marketing skills. So you really need those three buckets. You need the creative skill to be able, I'm going to create something good. You need the mindset, which is like, no, I'm a business person, and so I'm not a starving artist. And then you need the actual, okay, I know how to market that. And if you can't do that yourself, you need to be able to farm those out.
Right, right, right. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, nowadays I feel like you can throw something up on any of these. I mean, I see a lot of people, especially on Twitter, self-publishing and just throwing up on something like Gumroad or whatever else it is, and getting that angle going, and keeping all the money pretty much outside of some of those fees and different things like that. So now that's really really interesting. So tell me a little bit about kind of the marketing side of things. And now you're doing email marketing, all these other things. How is that? Are you just doing contract work? Is it you're growing maybe a smaller agency? What's the game plan there?
Well, it's for me, I'm just a one person agency, right? So my goal is I don't want to scale necessarily to get to be a bigger agency. I did that with my law firm, you know what I mean? And so my goal, I read this, I'm gonna get a little esoteric on you. And I read this
Yeah.
essay called the Two Cultures of Mathematics, right? And it basically talks about how in math there's two poles. There's the bean counters, or there's like, okay, we got to figure out how much thrust the rocket's going to need, in that math equation. And
Hmm.
then there's the theoretical guys, like, okay, how many universes are there, or whatever. And what was really interesting is the problems, the thorniest problems to be solved, the answer always lies in the opposite pole, right? So the
Hmm.
theoretical guys could not figure out the answers to some of their harder problems without having the other pole. And same for the bean counter guys, right? And so that essay had a profound impact on my life, to where I set up my life to where I have two of the opposite poles, and the tension between those two poles basically serves me really well. So my goal basically is I have my email service agency, right, which is or ghostwriting or whatever, and I don't want to scale that. And then I have the information product side, which is no clients, just selling information. And so the sort of
Yeah.
those two things, the tension between those two poles is kind of what I'm working on, and I'm open to either one of those growing either way. It doesn't really matter to me. But that's kind of the business plan that I have, which is kind of an esoteric creative person business plan, based a little bit in math. So
I love it. I love it. I mean, I guess if I look at it that way, I have some of those similarities across those as well because I got like a service business that we service clients, and then I have the product business that's just kind of on a once it's built, it's a little bit more on autopilot. Obviously, there's marketing and different things that you have to do, but that in itself can scale. If something happened tomorrow, that thing can grow exponentially and overtake what's happening on the service side of the business. So,
right, yeah,
no,
and
that's
I definitely want to have a robust information business on that side for the products and services because I mean for the products because I there was a lot of carnage in my life from 2017 to 2020, 2020, 2021, because I basically went down every rabbit hole you could go in the internet and followed every guru you could follow.
hmm
Pardon me. And just because I didn't know. And, I feel like a lot of people are misled by information products and by the sort of
yeah,
the success
of others.
industry, the self-improvement industry. And so a lot of what I do focuses around helping people figure out, okay, what can I do and not fall into those traps, and how can I kind of create a niche of one, basically. So
Right, right. No, that's really interesting. So what are some of those interesting rabbit holes you went down on? I'm really curious.
oh, I mean, I did everything, man. I was like, I was trying to do all these funnels, and I wrote a book, and I was doing a book funnel, and I did I kind of dabble in all these other like sales, people stuff, and the masculine movement, and like all these different things. I was just like just going around, and I was like, well, something's got to make sense, and I got to be able to figure something out, and and like I said, is that it's very seductive if you come from anything other than the internet itself,
Right, right,
because
right.
it's because of the things that you say, like you can scale so fast, there's so much opportunity, the world is your marketplace, but you still need the basic levels of marketing, you still need to know how to do copywriting and all those things.
Dude, I love that you just said that it's when you come from the outside world into the internet world, it's seductive. Like everything seems sexy, and that you could just turn something on and make $10,000 tomorrow, type of thing. That's so true. That is so true. Is there anyone that stuck out to you during that process that like is doing a really, really good job? That kind of, I guess, was there like, did you go down the rabbit hole of email marketing? You're like, oh, this is it. This is really what I want to do, and I can focus on this, or was it that just kind of came as like a byproduct?
No, it was more bits and pieces, because what I
Okay.
realized is there's two issues anytime that you're buying a course online or following somebody, and one is survivor bias, right? And then the other one is what's called the wide earp effect. And what that means is that anyone selling a course or anyone selling a sort of like an overall framework, and this goes mostly for people who sell like giant frameworks, okay, say this whole framework is going to change your whole life, right? Well, what happens is that you're not the same person, you're not in the same market, you're not in the same
Right.
time, right? And so it's very difficult to replicate that success. And but if you do a large enough sample size of people, a few people will be successful no matter what,
Yeah.
and then that becomes a social proof, and then people buy off that social proof, right? And so for me, what I've really got relentless about is what is the next skill that I need to develop, and who can teach me that exact skill.
Right.
That's
Right.
it. It's like I want to learn to play like if I wanted to learn to play the guitar, who can teach me how to play the guitar? You know,
Right.
and
Right.
so when I wanted to learn more about infotainment, I was like, okay, who do I go to teach me more about infotainment? I mean, I had a very strong background in stand up comedy and
hmm
in my one man show and in theater, but how do I translate that to business and what's called infotainment, where you're wrapping around, right? And who can teach that to me? And so that's what I try to help people understand is that you need to identify just the next skill and start stacking skills, and that will hold you in a better stead, in my opinion, than trying to do some system that someone's selling you for everything.
Dude, I love that. I love that. I think that's a very, very important lesson because I do think people take smaller bites, don't just bite off the whole entire pizza at once, and fold it up and try to eat the whole thing. It's just, I feel like people need to take those little small, it's just like the same thing that I tend to like preach about on Twitter. It's like people starting a business, dude. It's literally no joke. If you wanted to just put up if you have a service to sell, whatever else it is, I mean, it is, maybe you'll spend 20-30 bucks a month, but it is absolutely free to do anything right now. So if you just start there and you start realizing, okay, now I have my website up, okay, now I got to focus on how do I do email marketing, okay, let me go learn that, and then let me go do this, let me go do that. It's these little steps that you start taking, that you start kind of, you're not just doing it to do it, you're actually taking, you're learning it, and then you're actually putting it into action, that exact same into your business, and you're seeing the results, and you're like, oh, this is something I can double down on. Or hey, okay, the next thing is I got to learn social media. How do I write content on social media? What's going to bring people into this funnel? So no, I love that you said that, because I think too many people think, oh, I need to start a business, I need to go big, I need to get everybody, I need to start hiring people, I need to start doing all these things. And it's like, you're just now stunting your growth at that point, I feel
Mhm.
like.
Yeah, and it's a classic. Pardon me. It's a classic business mistake. I mean, I did it when I opened my
Yeah.
first firm. I bought like a $7,000 desk, right?
Hmm.
And I rented artwork from LACMA, which was the LA Museum of Modern Art or whatever. They had this
Yeah.
program where you could rent art that they just had in the basement or whatever, right? I had this beautiful art and I had all this stuff, and because I didn't understand business at all, I was like, I'll just open the doors and stuff will come to me. And now if I was to redo my firm now, I wouldn't even have an office. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd have a cardboard table, right? And so, and there's that issue. People just want to go big because that's what they think they need to do. And then the other thing is that you need to decide: am I in the business of arbitrage, right? Which is, am I just trying to leverage things in an economy? Like, am I going to sell flashlights or something, right? Like, it doesn't matter
Right.
to me what I do. Am I in arbitrage? Am I just going to sell something to make money and figure out what that lever is, or do I have a craft, right? Am I going to? And so for me, when I was a lawyer, I didn't really matter to me. Like, it was just a way to make money. And then as I'm older than you, so I have two kids. I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. I got married later, and I just decided, I was like, well, when I moved and closed my firm down, what kind of business do I want to have? And I was like, well, I want to be a craft. I wanted to be in long haul, and that's a long haul move,
Hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter, like, if you have to take a job to do whatever to pay the bills until you can
Right.
develop whatever it is that you want. That's a much different play than, no, I got to do a startup and I got to do it fast, and I'm going to do an exit or whatever. So.
Right. Absolutely, man. No, that's amazing. How many clients are you able to take on at any given time with the email marketing side of things? Is it taking up a lot of your time at the moment?
I mean, so I went in this. It was really kind of funny, sort of the process of what happened is I had someone that I knew, and they had this course on Upwork, right, and to do Upwork, and I didn't even know what Upwork was, and I was like, well, I'll try this. And so I did Upwork from February of last year till basically last year, just to December, basically. And I did really well. I just very, very part time. I became top rated in the top 3%, and I my rate went way up, and so I was just kind of like messing around on that for like the longest time. And then what happened was is that I started to be able to transition off Upwork, and then get my portfolio, and then have people come to me. And so right now I have a very small client base, because I'm really focused right now on wanting to get the max results as I sort of build my portfolio out. Because I believe when you start your business, if you're going to do an Upwork or if you're going to take on clients for writing, it's better to make less money and just kick so much ass for your first set of clients and focus on them, than try to take in a bunch of clients and then overextend yourself, because then no one's going to be happy. And if this and you need time to learn your process and all that. So I only have a few clients. I have other ways I make money too. And
Yeah.
so right now I'm focused on basically just kicking ass for who I have right now, and kind of having a wait list for anybody else that wants to work with me right now.
Dude, that's awesome. So you're another Upwork success story. I built my entire agency off the back of Upwork, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like the
Yeah.
entire thing, and you're absolutely right. I think so. I started in 2016. I got my consulting gig ended, and I was sitting in my 600 square foot LA apartment, And I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to get a job, that's for sure. I need to figure out what I can do. And then, I've hired people through Upwork, but I've never been on the side of providing services. So
Mhm.
as a project manager, exact same thing. Just went in, got a few different clients, at the same time, a little bit part time here, a few hours here, and you just start building those reps and you start getting those reviews, and it starts bumping you up the list. No joke. My guest author Upwork article just went live yesterday, actually, because they asked me to write an article about like running an agency, systemizing, and all these other things. And yeah, man, Upwork has been an absolute game changer for me. And honestly, running an agency, if you ever, get to a point where, deal flow through your website or whatever starts to like dwindle down, Upwork is always a great place to go and just try to find those next clients and apply for those jobs, because there's so many people on that platform. I think it's very underrated. I think a lot of people have bad experience with it because they'll go in and hire somebody and they'll do a shit job, and whatever that might be, and then they don't want to, they don't use that as like a gateway to be like, well, let me see how I can maybe provide a service on here, whatever they're doing. And to me, that was an absolute game changer in my life. And like I said, I even wrote it yesterday on my post. I was like, Upwork. I built my agency off of Upwork and Shopify. Those two platforms for me were literally my agency.
Yeah, no, I mean, and the cool thing about Upwork was what I realized was that most people just look at how much money that you've made, right? And so, like,
Yeah,
if once you get past a certain point of how much money that you've made, then people start coming to you because they're like, oh, well, other people have paid this person. So,
that's
what my
right.
whole
That's
goal,
right.
my whole goal, yeah. So my whole goal then was to get like a recurring gig, what I could. So I got this gig that I wrote 3 articles a day, every day for 5 months, right? Straight, no
Wow.
breaks, like Monday through Sunday, 3 articles a day. And
Whew.
it was a grind. It was horrible. It was, and I left at the end of 5 months. I just couldn't do it. I was like, I'm burnt out. I can't do it. But what that did was is that it did two things. One is, I wrote over 600,000 words or whatever it was, and so my writing chops went way up because I can't. If I don't feel like writing now, I can't complain because I used to bang out 3 articles a day. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like, I'm just being a wuss if I don't write. And then I got paid every week, and so I just grinded out that money to get up to a certain level, and then people were like, "Oh, people are paying him," because I didn't really want to do articles, but you can always switch what you do and what jobs that you take. So I would always recommend to people, the way that I look at it is get your how much money you've made up as fast as, not even like a ton, like get it to 5 grand, right? And then
Right.
once you have 5 grand, then people look more at reviews or whatever. But I have not had that many jobs in Upwork to get to the top 3% of, whatever the highest rating you can have. I have the highest
The
rating.
expert vetted one.
No, I can't do my on writing. You don't do vetted for writing because it's only on the technical stuff they do the vetting. So it's the next one down.
Oh,
It's the
yeah, top rated
high
plus
rated
or something
plus
like
or
that.
whatever, right? And
Yeah.
so the cool thing is, though, now that I have that, is like if I ever need money or I want to, I don't know, like buy something, I'm just like, oh, I'll just go get a gig on Upwork, and people ping me all the time, and there are. I like that, like the SaaS company, right? The SaaS company that has 111 employees, that they came to me through Upwork.
Yep.
And so there are, once you get to a certain level in Upwork, there's two different Upworks. There's the you're just beginning, and it's like Twitter.
Yeah.
It's like Twitter. It's like you're just beginning, you're
You're
grinding,
right. You're absolutely
grinding,
right about that.
and
You're
then once
absolutely right about
and
that.
then once you get past a certain threshold, you're in a whole new platform. You
That's
know,
right.
like on Twitter right now, I'm on the beginning parts of Twitter with my account. Like I'm on the grinding phase right now, but I know that there's another. I'm not worried about it because it's just volume reps will get me to where I want to go eventually in there. So yeah, and it's just,
Exactly.
and so like for my email list, I always have people emailing me on the email list and asking me questions about Upwork, and I give them all the same advice, which is just, try to find something that's recurring and just grind it out. I mean,
Hmm.
I didn't make that much money over that, whatever it was, 5 months, from February to July. But after that, once I grinded out that first money, it just blew up from there because I had a good review. Well, I had like one review, but I had all that money, and so people just looked at the money and said, "Oh, he must be doing good something because people paid him." And
Hmm.
that's an underrated tactic that people don't look at for Upwork.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And yeah, I had a whole system set up for Upwork, and actually for my agency, one of our biggest clients, which was PGA Golf, came through Upwork.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty amazing what you can do on there. No, man, that's really really cool. So how's been? I want to chat a little bit about Twitter, because you and I both did a similar, or did the same course, I should say. I'd love to know how's the Twitter grind been, and what do you are you getting any any business through there? Are you trying to get business, or is that more just for yourself? Like, what? Tell me a little bit more about that. I'd love to hear why your journey's been on there.
Yeah. So I've gotten, how do I say this? I've done business for free on Twitter, and I did get I can't really talk about this email client, but I did get a very good, like you would know who it is, like a very good health products brand, natural
Okay.
product brand from Twitter that I'm writing some emails for, just off of DMs basically. And my account's really small. Like I haven't even hit 300 people yet. But I'm not looking for Twitter for business. What I'm looking for right now is the Twitter is part of my audience growth strategy, right? So all I want to
Hmm.
do is just grow my email list, and that's my number one focus right now is growing my email list and helping people with their email list. That's it.
Nice. And are you also doing LinkedIn or no?
No, I'm not doing LinkedIn at all. I'm just doing one platform at a time. I'm a one platform kind of guy. So like I'm a big believer in volume reps. And so for example, like I have my podcast, which I need you to come on. I have 620 episodes in that podcast, right?
Wow.
And I did 365 episodes in 365 days in that podcast. And
Damn.
yeah. And so that's once I learned that lesson, that's why I did the 600,000 words in that 5 months. But the cool thing about the podcast is that once I built that, now I record episodes or don't record episodes, but I use that for interviews, like for content marketing, right? So I can cold email anybody and be like, hey, come on my podcast. I have 620 episodes. And if that doesn't get them, then I just list some of the people that I've interviewed on there. And it's the same thing like Upwork. Now that I have some names on there, like some really cool people that I've been like pretty much like famous writers that I've interviewed on there, both in the copywriting world and in like the regular writing world, people will come on. And so that's, for me, I just focus at one thing at a time. So once I did the podcast build out, now I'm building out Twitter. And then once I build out Twitter, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll figure it out.
Tell me about some of the, if you don't mind sharing, some of the guests that you had on your podcast. Who are some of the people that came on?
Sure. So on the copywriting side, I had like Ben Settle come on. I had
Okay.
Daniel Throssell come on. I had Chris Orzakowski come on. On the writing side, there's a writer who I love his work. His name is James Howard Kunstler. And so he
Never heard
did
of them.
he's kind of nichey as a writer, but he's like a legit writer. Like he lives up in New York, and he all he does is he lives off his books, right? He wrote this one book called The Long Emergency, where it talks about how basically that oil is going to become so expensive to get that it's going to cause a crisis, which is basically exactly what's happening right now. So he was like
Yeah.
very prescient with that, and so and there's a guy named Carl Denninger who I interviewed, and just people like that. And it's just cool, man. Like once you have a platform that you've got some kind of asset for, it doesn't even have to be an audience. Like my audience isn't
Right.
even big for the podcast. I don't even care. I don't even care about the audience. I care about the podcast as an asset, and then I can just call up whoever I want to interview them, basically because of what I've created there. So.
Yeah. And how is overall? How's the podcast performing? I mean, I've honestly never seen it on Twitter. I haven't seen you post much about it. Like, is it
Mhm.
getting just like organic traffic at the moment, or
Mhm.
how are you doing that?
Well, so I have a different view on content marketing. And so
Okay.
most people, what they do when they do a podcast, and which is very normal, it's the normal, according to Hoyle, way to do it is they say, well, my success metric is downloads, right?
Right.
Or, monthly downloads or whatever. Okay. And that was never my goal with the podcast. The sole purpose of the podcast for me was that I would be able to reach out to people and interview people who either interested me or who could be
Hmm.
potential clients
It's
for
more for yourself. It sounds like it's more for your like your own like kind of feeding your own creativity and the people that you want to talk to. It sounds like.
Yeah, well, that's half of it because I have the whole my Twitter handle is like the understory bard, right? Well, people are like, well, what's the understory? What's the understory? It's the idea of the creative process that I believe in, which is you have to kind of go into the darkness and kind of root around and get lost, and you can
Hmm.
get inspiration I call it from the side learning, right? So I'll talk to somebody on the podcast, and I'll interview them, and then I'll learn something, and they'll give me an idea on my business, right? Or I ghost wrote for like 3 months. I ghost wrote this newsletter where all they did was interview founders and VC people, and that's not my world. I'm not a startup person, but I learned so much ghostwriting from that group, right? And so anyway, so now that the podcast is built out, so that's part of it, is the creative journey, but also it's like, now if I see a business that I want to write emails for, or do writing for, I'm going to just interview them first, and then they're going to get to know me, and then I can hit them up for business that way. So it's an asset regardless of how many followers that it has, and that's how I look
That,
at it, as the volume, what the volume reps does for it, basically.
that's awesome. When did you start your podcast, by the way?
I don't know, like 3 years ago.
Oh, okay.
two
Okay.
two
So
and a
right
half
around the
years,
pandemic
3 years
time,
ago.
like right
Yeah,
around the pandemic.
before it was before the pandemic, so it was basically when I moved here. So in 2019, I guess. So yeah, when I moved to Virginia Beach. So
Nice. What made you move to Virginia from California?
so my wife is an actress,
Okay.
and I met her in L.A. And then, so when we decided that we were going to leave California, we were looking at Arizona, which is where my parents lived, and then Virginia Beach. I was like, I want my kids to be from the beach, and so
That's awesome. Because
yeah.
you
So
didn't
my
get to see that in
mother-in-law,
North Dakota.
yeah, my mother-in-law lives right down the street, and so I take out her trash. Today's trash day, so I will take her trash and put it back in, and I literally live 30 seconds from my mother-in-law. It's a dream. It's a dream for everyone.
That's awesome, and you get to leave the kids with her every so often too, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, and my sister-in-law lives 5 minutes away, so there's a lot of family here. And then the grandparents, um, the other set of grandparents, because my wife's family has two. She has two, stepdad and whatever, or stepmom and
Yeah,
whatever. Um, they're close, and so for my kids, they have a lot of family here. So, have you ever been to
that's
Virginia
awesome.
Beach?
I have not, man. I have not. I've heard great things about it though.
I didn't even know it was a place, and so you know,
Like
I was
what
like,
the fuck are we
what?
moving to type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I visited it a couple times, and what I did was, and so I rented a beach house, and I was like, well, let's see if everything goes amazing and everything works out amazingly. Like, what's the best that we can do? And so I rented this beach house right on the beach. It was like stupidly expensive for like a week in the summer, and I was like, I can't believe people get to live like this. And
Yeah.
and it's a great place. It's an amazing place. It's an amazing place. It's a very well kept secret.
How's the weather over there right now?
It's temperate. I mean, it's like so in Virginia, we're right on the border of Virginia. So you're as far south and as far east as you can go in Virginia and still be in Virginia. So I mean, it got kind of cold, but it's funny because I grew up in North Dakota. So I started in North. The
Right.
Skalskys. That's my last name but the Skalskys,
Yeah.
they went to the coldest place, North Dakota. Then in high school, we moved to the hottest place in Arizona because we're people of extremes, right? And so I grew up in snow in North Dakota, and it was funny. I had an eye appointment last year, and they called me 2 days before the eye appointment. They said it was at LensCrafters of all places, and they said, "Hey, we have to reschedule your eye appointment." I was like, "Why?" They said, "Well, it's going to snow in 2 days." I was like, "What? What?" So it's like if there's the whole city shuts down for snow. Like it was like a light dusting of snow, and everyone's freaking out. So it's pretty temperate weather here.
That's awesome. Is your wife still doing the acting thing?
No, I mean she acted for a long time. I mean, you've seen her on
Okay.
TV. You've seen her on TV for
Okay.
sure.
Oh,
And
cool.
this goes back to the creative thing where, she has like 50 or 60 IMDb credits, and but the thing about, if you don't self-produce, there's like two tiers, right? There's the top 1% of the top 1% that everybody knows, and then there's everybody else. And that was my wife. My
Right.
wife never broke through. I mean, but she was in movies, and she was on TV all the time. Like one time we were watching a Discovery Channel movie or a Discovery Channel television show, where then the commercial break, there was a commercial for another show she was on. Like she did a lot of stuff, right?
Oh,
And
cool.
but she just never broke through, and all the money goes to the top group. And so because there's so much creative talent, that they pay everybody dirt cheap, because they'll just be like, fine, we'll take somebody else. Because there's
Right.
in LA, especially as an actress, you can say, I want a 5'3" Eskimo, right? That is 100 pounds, and
Yeah.
you'll have 25 of them show up for an audition. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
you can pick the
Right.
most obscure thing that you need, and there's 50 of them, and male, female, doesn't matter. Like, and so that's why part of what I always try to teach people is you want to become a niche of one, and you want to self-produce.
Right.
And
Right.
so
No, that's a good point.
that's all my information products basically, and everything that I'm developing goes around that concept is how do you do that? How do you create a niche of one? How do you self-produce? How do you be a creative person, and be able to monetize that? And so it's, hard fought lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was down in LA and hung around people that were, on your Curb Your Enthusiasm and all these other shows,
Mhm.
was Grey's Anatomy, like I had coffee with a bunch of people. The guy from fucking Breaking Bad, not Bryan Cranston, but the guy Saul. What's his name? I
Cody
forget his
Kirk or
name.
whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I always found, okay, so those people broke through and they have their own shows and all this other stuff. But man, I was actually very, very surprised to find out how many non-famous people, like the people that you would never recognize on the street, that did commercials. I knew one guy who did an Aflac commercial and made so much money, didn't do shit, like literally shot that one commercial, lived on a boat for I don't know how long. He was getting paid. He came by and he was just like, guys, look at this. I can't believe this. Got a check. He was getting checks for like 50 grand a month for like,
Mhm.
I don't know how long. But
Mhm.
to me, that was always, I was like, why don't more people tap into that? Like, why not go make money there? And then if you end up breaking through into a TV show, great, but you're still able to earn a living doing what you're doing.
Well, I'll tell you why is a couple things. One is those things are incredibly hard to get. So it's you have to, like I said, you have to imagine that it's a numbers game, right? So somebody's going to get
Right.
it, right? And so, but you can be the best looking actor or actress. You can be the most super talented person, and there's 50 other people at every audition just like you. Okay. And then the second issue is that, and this happens a lot, is you'll get something and you'll get paid like that, and then you'll never get anything ever again.
Right. Right. Right.
And I have a friend of mine who he got on General Hospital, but he was like 24 years old, and he got in General Hospital and he was making like whatever $30,000 a month in General Hospital for 2 years, and then he was like he got, for whatever reason, his character got killed off, and then he just never worked again. So
Wow.
imagine that, making 20, 30 grand as a 24-year-old a month, and then being on General Hospital, but then you couldn't ever do anything ever again for whatever reason, right? And that's very common. That happens a lot. Like if you look at like your favorite movie, just look at the actors that were in there that weren't Tom Cruise or the top
Hmm.
10 people. They just cycle those people through. And so yeah, for artists, and this is the thing about being creative, is that you have to learn those three skills, right? You have to learn the creative side. You have to learn the mentality of, no, I'm in control. I'm not a starving artist. I control my stuff, my
Hmm.
creations, and then you have to know how to market. Um, and and that's, if you don't know how to do that, you're not going to make it. Like in Twitter, right?
Yeah.
It's the NGMI or whatever. Not going to make it, whatever. And
Yeah.
or you might make it for a little bit, but without those three things, you won't be the next Meryl Streep or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. So
And
what's
LA
your
sucks.
what's
LA sucks. You don't want to live in LA anyway. So that's another reason to self-produce is go live in Virginia Beach and self-produce here. It's like so much better than LA.
Yeah, and that's funny that you say that. You know who also said that was I think it was Danny McBride. He shot that one show on
Mm-hmm.
HBO where was the principals, vice principals, or whatever else
Mm-hmm.
it is. And
Yeah.
he said something very similar. He's like, "Fuck LA, man." He's like, "You can shoot a show anywhere nowadays as long as you got a camera and it's cheaper. You don't people don't charge you up the ass for permit zones and different things like
Yep.
that, and it's way easier to do this." So that's funny that you mentioned that.
Well, and
Now,
a lot.
yeah, no,
No, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and a lot of people that have that attitude that I have sour grapes, right? So
Right.
like they're like, I should have made it or whatever. I was like, I don't have that at all. Like I know exactly why I didn't make it. Like I didn't master those three buckets, and all my stuff sucked for the first 5 years, right?
Right.
So I have no doubt as to why I made it or didn't make it, right? But um, knowing what I know now and having the skills that I have now is that I would not go that route just because the environment has changed, like you said, and it's a trap. Now, if you like, if you and especially don't even get me started for what it is for women. Like you could get my wife on your podcast and talk to her for the trials and tribulations of her career for 20 years. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right,
It's an insane. There's no sane person would do it if they didn't have to do it, right? And you don't have to do it.
right.
You can create whatever you want.
Yeah, long term, you can make way more money doing shit online and grinding it out online and finally breaking through than doing in the entertainment world.
Well, and there's no middleman either. So just do an email list. Just learn how to grow an
Yeah,
email list. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you grow an email list and that's your audience, you have a distribution channel. You can sell them whatever you want.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And if they like you, they won't think it's weird if you say, "Hey, I have a book. You want to buy my book?" And some of them will buy your, you know what I mean? People don't
right.
understand this about books. Okay, listen to this stat. There's
Yeah.
something like 1 million books written in English every year, like 1 million. All right.
Okay.
500 books a year sell over 10,000 copies
Wow.
out of 1 million.
Wow.
It's some now some reply guy is going to look it up and he's going to be like it's whatever, like it's
Yeah.
whatever it is, it's that scale. Okay, it is absurdly difficult to sell more than 10,000 books, right? And so that's why, like, I always like books. I'm always like, sell a high ticket book, charge $100 for a book and sell it to, make it really, really good and sell it to, 1,000 people or whatever.
Right. Right. No, that's crazy. Well, I know you got to run in a little bit. I don't want to hold you up too much, but man, this was super super interesting. Oh, last question I had for you. What's your
Mhm.
what's your email list growth strategy at the moment? How are you getting people over to your email list? Is it directly through Twitter? Is it through other channels? Like, what are you currently doing to grow that list, if I may ask you?
So I have one big email list, but I have two main ways that I do it. Right. So I started a newsletter on Twitter. And so, and my Twitter handle is understory barred. Right. And then, but I just have a landing page where there's two ways that I do it. One is that through my podcast, so people will find me there, right?
Yeah.
But then, and this is a strategy for free for you if you are ever thinking about it, is when you have guests, make sure that you interview for your podcast. If they post the podcast to their own distribution channel, then that's an A+ guest, right? Like
Right.
it's always part of the metrics when I'm trying to decide who I'm gonna interview if I'm doing it as a growth strategy. Because, like, take Carl Denninger for example. Carl Denninger, he always posts his stuff, and my list grew. Had the biggest days I've ever had ever on my list, just because he just put the podcast up
Wow.
on his on the market ticker for what he does. And so it's like, and that's a great thing why people, they get frustrated if their podcast isn't Joe Rogan. And
Right.
the thing is that I would challenge people is just look at your content, look at it as an asset, and it doesn't matter if 5 people follow you, but if you interview really cool, awesome people and they're always putting your podcast on their distribution channel, you're growing. That's an asset.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it's just a
I
different way
I
to.
look at podcast and I look at content in general, not just the podcast side of things. I always people I think the general notion is that people are not willing to play the long game, or most people aren't, I should say.
Mhm.
They always want the instant gratification, the quick hit, the quick money grab, and all these other things. That's great. If you want to chase that, keep chasing that. For me, I always look at it this way. You and I are talking right now. You may down the road go do something and have a huge following, or I may go do something and have a huge following, whatever that might be. I'm always interested because this is what I do. I take from my own kind of experience. If I hear somebody maybe on a Joe Rogan or on any podcast that I listen to, I have a bunch of podcasts that I listen to. I'm always the person to go back especially if they're interesting. That's how I've gotten some of my podcast guests.
Mhm.
Actually, I go back down that rabbit hole and say, this person is really interesting. I love what they said here. It might be just a little bit of a snippet, and I'll go all the way back and I try to find them on different podcasts, what they said, and all these other things. So I think building that content library and letting those content pieces stack consistently is a very underrated growth tactic for the long term, in my opinion, because I think it's just it trumps everything else. You can't beat time. Like, you can't beat the amount of times you've done something. I'm in my third episode now. I'm about to get to like 30 episodes soon. I'm fine going the next 5 years, going an episode a week and keep trucking along and doing this because I just enjoy talking to people. Like I'm not doing this to be like, well, I need sponsorships, I need this, I need money, I know all that. I'm here for the conversation. And to be honest with you, Wade, like the conversation with you today, super different and super refreshing compared to anybody else, because I do interview a lot more people that are in the tech space or
Mhm.
whatever that might be. And even though, you're in the email marketing space and all this other stuff, but there's always these correlations, what you said, the niche of one, wherever you're doing, whether you're acting or you're doing email marketing, you're doing Twitter, whatever else you're doing, that foundation is still exactly the same. So I just want to say thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah, no, and I actually I totally agree with you, and I'll kind of leave you with this. I mean, I'm enjoying talking to you. I have another 12 minutes, but not. I'm just kidding. No, but
Yeah.
that's like you're having a fun conversation. Like, no, don't kick me off yet, Z. No, but
I'm putting this into your corner now. You get to talk and say,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
done today. I need to leave.
yeah. No, but the thing is, I agree with you in the content marketing, and for me, so there's that, right? Like you always want to be carving out real estate space, but you do it in a way that you enjoy doing it. So I like writing emails to my email list. I like doing I like interviewing people.
Yep.
I like being interviewed, right? So these are all things that builds internet space, real estate on the internet, right? But then there's the other thing too is about connection. And this is the thing is like and I know that you're really good about putting out value, and you're really good about that, and your Twitter stuff. If people don't follow you on Twitter, I don't know what they're thinking. You have a great Twitter account,
Thank you. I
and
really appreciate that, man. It means a
you,
lot
you
coming
work
from you, honestly.
you work hard on that model, right? And so for me though, is I adopt a different model, because if I try to constantly put out value all the time, then I'll burn out, right?
Right.
And so my theory of content is that it's make it entertaining or interesting
Hmm.
first, because people will never they'll never get entertainment fatigue. If you're interesting, or if you're funny, or if you just have a fact that people never heard of or whatever, and that's what your content is based around, they will always look forward to hearing from you. But people get burnt
Yep.
out on value. People get burnt out on value. They get burnt out on what's the 10 books I have to read, or they get burnt out on how do I optimize my morning routine. Like they just want to be human beings sometimes. And so if for
Exactly.
me, my entire content strategy revolves around infotainment and being entertaining, because that creates that connection. And then once their eyes can see and their ears can hear and they have connection, then they're going to be more open to me being like, well, talk to me more, Wade, about what volume reps are. Talk to me more about how can I have infotainment in my own business, or like whatever, right? And
Hmm.
so and people get so caught up in the how many followers do I have, and how big is my audience, and for like your
And,
client.
and the things people are willing to do for those numbers is fucking amazing, to
Yeah.
be quite honest with you. Like the shit that I'm seeing online right now, everybody reusing the same fucking hook for like all this other stuff. I'm like, and listen, I fall into that trap in the beginning, because at the same time, I'm like, I'm trying to grow a business, but I want to also do it authentically. Like you got to find a balance between the two, right? In anything. But honestly, man, in the past, I'd say like even 2 months, the amount of shit that I've seen people posting and the stuff that they're doing for numbers, I mean, I'm just like mind blown.
Well, two things happen, right? In that situation, one, you burn out because you just can't, or you put out crappier content. If you're going to
Right.
sit there and you're going to spend, hours and hours and hours and hours every week on writing a thread and doing some amazing, like, because my newsletter, for example, I don't publish my newsletter every week. I publish my newsletter whenever I have something to write about, and kind of when it fits in my creative schedule, because I just don't want to put out a crappy idea, right?
Yeah.
So I don't promise my people, I'm like, you're going to get it whenever you're going to get it, right? And then, but what happens is that if you create this relentless schedule for yourself, your audience will always expect it. And people are like, consistency, yeah, consistency. But like, I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. I have 10 other things. I have another business. Like I have all these other things that I'm doing. So like, I just make sure that I'm entertaining and I'm interesting, and that when I do, put value out there, that it people can use it, right? And
Right.
that allows me to kind of have a business that I like, and I don't feel like I'm a slave to my business, and I don't stress out about putting out the content or whatever. And it may be a slower growth strategy, but like to me, the only metric that really matters is your email list. Like, what is the list that you control? Okay,
Exactly.
how big is the audience that you control? Not how many people follow you on Twitter or whatever. Like, how many people do
Right.
you actually, will pick up the phone, right? Like they'll open your email or whatever.
Right.
And for
Right.
me, that's the only metric that I care about. And then I kind of treat my list very with care because that's like the most valuable thing that I have. And but I think people get caught up in all these vanity metrics. And
Yeah.
the only other thing I'll say about it is this: is that, and some people are running like that arbitrage business, right? Where they're like, I'm going to find an inefficiency in the market and I'm going to exploit it. I'm going to sell flashlights or whatever, and that's great. But I don't want to be in that business.
Right.
I want to actually help people that I want to help. So it actually does matter to me who's on my list. It does matter to me who I'm talking to. So I don't really want 100,000 people that I don't really like 80,000 of them. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Not that
Exactly.
they're bad people, but we're just not in the
We're
same
not connected.
not in the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so to me that's my strategy, and it's a slower growth strategy, but I stress very little about my Twitter account. I stress very little about my list and all of that. So
Good, good. And may I ask you if you're willing, if you're comfortable sharing, how big is your email list? Like, and I know that you focus very strongly on that. Like, is there a number that ballpark even, it doesn't matter, they want to share like how big that list may be at the moment?
So I've got a pretty decent sized list, but I'll say this, right. And so it's kind of that is the one thing I don't do money publicly, and I don't talk about my list publicly because
Okay.
two reasons. It's the lawyer in me. One, it's a flex, right, and two, I could totally lie about it. I could be like, oh, it's 25,000 people, right. But three, it's embarrassing because Ben Settle has a list of 40,000 people that have double opted in.
Okay.
So that is like to me the gold standard of like what a list is, and I do not have a list even in the same ballpark as that. So
Right.
I am embarrassed to say how big my list is when Ben settles out there with a 40,000 list that's double opt, right? And so and I don't talk about how much money I make either, because as a lawyer that's a trap. I tell people don't do that. Don't I there are Ryan Healy has I'm going to paraphrase this. Do you know who Ryan Healy is? He's a copywriter.
Sounds really familiar. That name.
He's a cool cat. I'm gonna interview him on my podcast. I'm gonna interview you in my podcast if you want to come on. But
Anytime.
he has this thing which is true, which is that there is money, and there is money in some secrets, right? And so I have a very, like, if you go on my 620 podcasts, like I cry in one of the episodes there because my son was in the hospital, and
Right.
I have a very far disclosure line where I talk about a lot of stuff about my life, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of shit. But there's certain things I don't talk about. I don't talk about how much money I make, and I don't talk about like things like metrics like that. Because
Right.
I also don't want people to think that that's something that it's a promise that they can do the same thing if they do what I do. You know what I mean?
Right. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I respect that. I respect that. Thank you. Thank you for shedding light on that.
Well, it loops it back to what we talked about in the beginning, right?
Right.
Which is like I don't want to become a guru who promises you're going to have a list of 10,000 people and you're going to make $350,000 or whatever, right?
Exactly.
In 6 months. Like I don't do that,
Right.
So um, I just want people to, I just want people to be able to stand on their own 2 feet and figure stuff out for themselves and help them figure those things out.
Right. Give them a little bit of that guidance, but don't do the work for them or promise them something that they're going to end up failing because they're not you at the end of the day.
Right. And they have to do the work. And that's the thing is that, there's this debate. There's a debate that I'm working on right now that we're going to have a debate, I think, on AI, right? And I'm on the con side of AI. Is that I think for writing at least is that when you do volume reps and you do a lot of writing, you discover things through that process, and
Right.
AI short circuits that process, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the thing is that you unfortunately you have to go into the darkness of the understory, and you have to face the bandits and the monsters, and you have to go through the insecurities, and you have to do the work to make those discoveries. But when you do that, people cannot move you off of your spot. You have a certainty about what
Hmm.
you're doing and what you've discovered. And there's just it just comes through when you can talk to someone. You'll know, like, when they're telling you, like, oh well, this is my strategy and here's how I discovered it. They own it. Like, you're not moving them off their spot because they've discovered it and they've owned it. So
Right. Right. Awesome. I want to last question. I know you got to run. What are some of the books that so I started writing about 10 months ago. I'm really trying to up my copywriting game for like a lot of my SaaS products and different things that I'm doing, and all these other things. Do you have any recommendations on good copy? I know I have the actual copywriting Adweek book over there. Any books you would recommend to anybody listening for copywriting, or even email marketing, or maybe even I don't know, a course that you've taken or something that you've seen out there that would be that you're like, dude, this makes a lot of sense, and this is really, really like a powerful.
Yeah, well, I can direct you to some people, right? So, for example, like Ben Settle has some really good stuff on really good books, right? But he has high ticket books; they're expensive. Like
Okay.
some of his books are like $1,000, right?
Oh wow.
Yeah. Like so, it's a really interesting It's a really interesting model that he has. But just the classics, like the Dan Kennedy, The Ultimate Sales Letter, right? Like that book. Not that you're necessarily going to write your sales letters like that, but anything that gives you a framework to start from, and then just do the reps from there.
Yeah.
And I'm probably kind of a contrarian on this. Is like, I don't think you need to read all the books, and
Right.
I think you just need to establish a baseline in something, and then do the volume reps. So for me,
Yep.
it started with articles, right? And so I just did 600, 700,000, so then you had to do a headline. I had to figure that out, and I had to do all that. And that just got my copy going. And then, and then I just kind of transitioned the stuff from my one man show and all that into my emails. And then it was infotainment, and I started doing infotainment reps, and just establish a baseline with something, and then just start doing volume reps, and you'll discover what you need to discover.
Beautiful, beautiful. And the last thing I want to say, man, I just started reading this Rick Rubin book. I don't know if you had a chance to check it out.
I've seen the cover. I was like, oh, that's an interesting cover. So I've heard good things about it.
Dude, highly recommend it. It's just like the creativity juice book, in my opinion. Like the guy is really, really strong, and his audiobook is even better because he's just a soothing, like Zen voice that I absolutely love listening to. So if you ever have time, check it out, man. I highly, highly recommend it.
No, 100%. Absolutely, 100%.
Awesome. Wade, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on. As you mentioned, I will take you up on that offer whenever you have some time. Let's get on your podcast. I'd love to, talk about anything you want to talk about. I swear to God, I feel like this hour flew by faster than any other hour that I've done. And I appreciate the conversation. You obviously have a ton of knowledge, and dude, whenever you want to come back, just hit me up and be like, hey, I'd love to do another podcast, and we'll make it happen.
Absolutely. Can I tell people where to find me?
Oh, please.
So on Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter at _Bard. That's _ Bard, BARD, and understory is like understory. Look it up. And then, but if you want to look at my so for my email list, just go to Understory Emails, and that's my website, understoryemails.com.
And we'll put that in the show notes when we release this episode as well, so that people will have a place to go click through and get right to where they need to be. So don't worry about that. I'll make sure. Yeah. No, thank you so much, man. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too, bud.
Well, you made it to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for tuning into What is My Brain podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you got some value out of it. Make sure you hit the subscribe button or the follow button to get notified when new episodes are live. I'm out. Thank you.